The red dust of Novaterra swirled around Dr. Liana Chen as she stepped off the transport shuttle. 3 years of interstellar travel had brought her to this remote human colony on the edge of contested space. Far enough, she hoped, from the memories that haunted her on Earth. "Welcome to paradise," muttered the colony's medical director, Dr. Elias Webb, as he shielded his eyes from the blowing dust. His weathered face cracked into a wry smile. "Hope you didn't expect gleaming facilities." Liana adjusted the strap of her medical bag. "I expected somewhere I could be useful." "Then you've come to the right hell," Elias replied, leading her toward a cluster of prefabricated structures. Colonies growing faster than infrastructure. Most settlers are miners, engineers, or agricultural specialists. Medical personnel are in short supply. The clinic was modest, but functional: 6 treatment rooms, basic surgical capabilities, and equipment that was at least a decade outdated by Earth standards. Liana ran her fingers along the examination table, feeling strangely at home among the imperfections. "Your quarters are through there." Elias pointed to a small adjoining room. "Not much privacy, but you'll be close when emergencies hit." And they always hit. That evening, Liana unpacked her few belongings and placed her mother's jade pendant beside her cot. Outside, twin moons cast purple-tinged shadows across the settlement. She'd barely closed her eyes when the emergency alert blared through the compound. "Chen, need you now." Elias's voice crackled over the CUM system. The clinic was chaos when she arrived. Colonial guards carried in a stretcher, their expressions grim beneath their protective masks. "What happened?" Liana asked, pulling on gloves. "Patrol found her at the border of the Eastern Ridge," one guard explained. "Looks like she was caught in a landslide during the storm." Liana froze when she saw the patient. Not human. The figure's skin was a deep violet hue with subtle iridescence, almost crystalline in texture. Where the skin had broken, a faint lavender luminescence seeped from the wounds. "Vesperian," Elias said quietly. "Elite guard, based on the markings." The Vesperians were the dominant species in this sector, technologically advanced and fiercely territorial. Their uneasy alliance with human colonies was still fragile after decades of conflict. "I've never treated a Vesperian," Liana admitted. "Few have. They rarely seek human assistance." Elias handed her a tablet. "Basic physiology data. They're silicon-based, not carbon. Different pressure points, different reactions to medications." The Vesperian's eyes suddenly flashed open, startlingly bright against her purple complexion. She tried to rise, hissing words in a language Liana didn't understand. "She's saying she won't be taken prisoner," translated one of the guards. "Tell her she's not a prisoner," Liana said firmly, meeting the alien's gaze. "She's a patient." When the translation came, the Vesperian warrior stared at Liana with an intensity that made the doctor's skin prickle. Then, unexpectedly, she relaxed back onto the table, though her eyes remained vigilant. "I'm Dr. Liana Chen," she said, keeping her voice steady as she began to assess the extensive injuries. "And you are?" The guard translated again. After a long pause, the Vesperian responded. "She says her name is Nira," the guard said. "Sentinel Nira of House Vitar, 3rd Battalion of the Collective." Outside, the storm intensified, rattling the clinic's thin walls. Liana knew the coming hours would test everything she'd learned in her years of practice. What she didn't know was that treating this alien warrior would change the course of her life on Novaterra forever. For 3 days, Nira remained a silent, difficult patient. Her violet skin had begun to mend along the fracture lines. But the lavender light that escaped from deeper wounds still pulsed with alarming irregularity. Liana consulted the limited Vesperian medical data available in the colony's database, but most information was theoretical at best. Her vital readings are stabilizing, Liana reported to Elias during their shift change. But she refuses pain management and barely tolerates the silicon-based nutrient solution. "The collective probably already knows she's here," Elias said, lowering his voice. "Their scouts have been spotted at the perimeter. Colony administration is nervous." Liana glanced through the observation window at her patient. Nira sat rigidly upright despite her injuries, her posture military perfect, even in a medical gown. The geometric patterns embedded in her skin rank markings. Liana had learned glimmered faintly. I need to change your dressings, Liana said. Gathering supplies tracked Liana's every movement as she entered the room. The translator device sat unused on the side table. Naira had made it clear she understood basic human speech, but preferred not to engage. I'm going to check the wound on your thoracic ridge, Liana explained, keeping her voice neutral and professional. She'd learned that Vesperians viewed illness as weakness and sympathy as insult. As Liana carefully removed the specialized dressing, Naira flinched almost imperceptibly. The crystallization process is progressing well, Liana observed, studying the way new violet tissue was forming. But this deeper section concerns me. Unexpectedly, Naira spoke, her voice like wind through crystal chimes. It will heal or it won't. The collective does not waste resources on damaged sentinels. Liana paused, surprised by both the perfect, accented English and the sentiment. Is that why you were alone on the ridge? You were. Discarded. Naira's eyes flashed dangerously. I was on reconnaissance. The storm was unexpected, and no one came looking for you? The Vesperian turned her face away. Failure to survive environmental hazards indicates defective training or genetic weakness. Liana applied the fresh dressing in silence, processing this glimpse into Vesperian culture. As she worked, she noticed a pendant of some iridescent material hanging from a chain around Naira's neck, the one personal item the warrior had refused to relinquish. That's beautiful, Liana commented. Is it from your homeworld? For a moment, Naira's stern expression softened. Her slender fingers touched the pendant. It is Kyrathel doesn't translate. From the deep caverns where I was, born. The word born seemed to carry weight, as though Naira had substituted it for another term. Liana recalled reading that most Vesperians were genetically engineered for specific functions. I have something similar, Liana said, pulling out her jade pendant. It was my mother's. It's all I have left of Earth. Naira studied the jade with unexpected interest. Your world is green. Ours is purple and silver. I'd like to see it someday, Liana said truthfully. Naira's expression hardened again. Humans are not permitted on Vesper Prime. Not even doctors. Liana asked with a small smile. For the first time, something like uncertainty flickered across Nira's face. You are. Different from what I was taught about humans. That night, Liana awoke to sounds of distress from the patient room. She found Naira thrashing in the grip of what appeared to be a nightmare, her wounds leaking more of the lavender light. Without thinking, Liana placed a hand on Naira's shoulder. The Vesperian's skin was cool and faintly textured, like polished stone. You're safe, she whispered. Naira's eyes snapped open. But instead of the expected anger, they held confusion and vulnerability. For one unguarded moment, her hand clasped Liana's before she seemed to remember herself and pulled away. Weakness, she muttered, more to herself than to Liana. No, Liana replied quietly. Just being alive? 2 weeks into Naira's recovery, the rains came to Novaterra. Water transformed the red landscape, and fragile desert blooms emerged overnight. In the clinic, a different kind of transformation was taking place. Your planet has a remarkable adaptive capacity, Naira observed as Liana helped her walk the length of the corridor part of her rehabilitation. The Vesperian moved with growing confidence, though her right leg still dragged slightly. Earth was similar, Liana replied, though with more permanent water and vegetation. Why did you leave it? The question caught Liana off guard. She'd successfully avoided speaking about her past since arriving on Novaterra. I needed a fresh start. Naira stopped walking, her violet features serious. You are running from something. As am I, Liana raised an eyebrow. I thought you were on reconnaissance. That was my mission, Naira acknowledged. But I chose this sector because it would take me far from Vesper Prime, from ... expectations. They reached the clinic's small observation deck. Rain streamed down the transparent panels, creating rivulets that distorted the view of the settlement. In the distance, mining equipment stood idle during the downpour. I lost someone, Liana said suddenly, surprising herself with the admission. A patient. A child. I did everything right according to medical protocols, but she died anyway. Naira listened silently. The parents forgave me, Liana continued, but I couldn't forgive myself. So I applied for the farthest posting available. Among the collective, failure has no forgiveness, Naira said softly. But I have begun to question this wisdom. They stood side by side, watching the rain. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, their hands moved closer until their fingers barely touched. Neither acknowledged it, but neither pulled away. The moment was broken by a colony alert. Elias rushed into the corridor. Vesperian craft approaching, he announced. They're demanding the return of their sentinel. Naira straightened, her military bearing returning instantly. My recovery is sufficient. I must report. Your injuries aren't fully healed, Liana protested. The deep tissue damage is irrelevant, Naira interjected. My duty is clear. But as the Vesperian delegation entered the clinic, three tall, imposing figures with more elaborate markings than Naira's Liana noticed the almost imperceptible tremor in her patient's hands. The lead delegate addressed Naira in their native tongue, the sounds like crystalline shards clinking together. Naira responded with appropriate deference, but Liana caught the tension in her posture. They're taking her now, Elias murmured to Liana. Administration wants to maintain good relations. She's not ready, Liana insisted. We don't have a choice. As Naira gathered her few possessions, now dressed in a sleek Vesperian uniform that had been brought for her, she hesitated before approaching Liana. You have done what no one else would, she said formally. The collective acknowledges this debt. But when the other Vesperians turned away momentarily, Naira quickly pressed something into Liana's hand, her pendant of iridescent stone. Remember, she whispered, even crystal can change, given sufficient pressure and time. Before Liana could respond, Naira had joined her delegation. At the doorway, she looked back once, her expression unreadable to anyone who hadn't spent weeks studying the subtle shifts of her alien features. But Liana saw what others couldn't: conflict, regret, and something else entirely. Something neither human nor Vesperian vocabulary had adequate words to describe. That night, alone in her quarters, Liana held the alien pendant next to her, Jade 1, watching how they caught the light of Novaterra's twin moons. Somewhere above the storm clouds, a Vesperian ship was carrying Naira back to her world and her duty. Yet somehow, Liana sensed their stories had only begun to intertwine. 6 weeks passed with no word from Naira, life in the Novaterra. Colony continued, new settlers arrived. Mining operations expanded, and the clinic remained busy with everything from industrial accidents to a mild outbreak of bacterial pneumonia. Liana threw herself into her work, trying to ignore the pendant that now hung alongside her mother's jade, a constant reminder of violet skin and crystalline eyes. Supply ships coming in, Elias announced one morning, and something else. Colony administration just received a formal communique from the Vesperian collective. Liana's heart jumped. About Naira? Not specifically, he replied, studying the message on his tablet. They're sending a scientific delegation to discuss water rights in the Eastern Territories. Apparently, they've discovered an aquifer that crosses both our boundaries. Disappointment washed over her. When do they arrive? Tomorrow. And guess who gets to be medical liaison? Elias gave her a knowing look. Your experience with Vesperian physiology makes you our only qualified candidate. The delegation landed with typical Vesperian precision, their ship touching down exactly at the scheduled time. Its crystalline hull refracting the morning sunlight into prismatic patterns across the landing pad. Liana stood with colony officials' medical kit at her side, protocol dictating that a physician be present for all diplomatic contacts. 5 Vesperians emerged, their formal attire more elaborate than anything Liana had seen before. Their leader stepped forward, addressing the colony administrator with fluid, accented English, and then at the rear of the group. Liana saw her. Naira looked different, in her posture even more rigid, her expression carefully neutral, additional rank markings etched into her violet skin. When their eyes met across the landing pad, Naira gave no indication of recognition. As per protocol, our medical officer will conduct brief health screenings, the administrator was saying. The Vesperian leader inclined his head. Of course. Sentinel Vitar will assist with translations for any medical terminology. It's only years of professional composure kept Liana's hands steady as she set up in the screening room. When Naira entered, Deloniana exhaled shakily. Your recovery appears complete, she said formally. Activating the medical scanner, appearances can deceive, Naira replied, her voice barely audible. She glanced at the ceiling corners, then toward the door. Understanding, Liana pressed a button that created a low-level sonic interference field standard for patient privacy. You're being monitored? Liana whispered. Always. Ira's composure cracked slightly. My loyalty was questioned after my time here. This mission is my chance for redemption. Is that why you didn't acknowledge me? To protect you. Naira's fingers briefly brushed against Liana's as the scanner passed between them. The collective values the alliance with human colonies, but fraternization is ... problematic. Yet here you are, Liana noted. I requested this assignment. It was ... illogical, dangerous. Naira's eyes met hers fully for the first time, but necessary. Before Liana could respond, the door slid open. The Vesperian leader entered, his crystalline features arranged in diplomatic pleasantness. Sentinel Vitar, you're needed for the preliminary discussions, he said smoothly. Is everything satisfactory, Doctor? All readings within normal parameters, Liana confirmed professionally. That night, Liana couldn't sleep. She paced her small quarters, the two pendants clicking together as she moved. A soft chime from her door startled her. Naira stood outside, her form silhouetted against the moon's light. Walk with me, she said without preamble. There are fewer monitoring systems in the agricultural sector. They walked in silence until reaching the edge of the hydroponics fields. The transparent domes glowed softly, housing earth crops adapted to Novaterra's soil. I could be executed for this meeting, Naira said finally. But I had to tell you if the water negotiations are not what they seem. Certain factions within the collective want to establish dominance, not partnership. You're betraying your people, Liana asked, shocked. I'm choosing what's right. Naira looked up at the stars. My time here with you. It changed something fundamental in me. I began to see beyond the rigid structures I was created to serve. Created? Nira's hand unconsciously touched the geometric patterns on her neck. Vesperians like me are genetically engineered for specific purposes. I was designed for military intelligence and diplomatic infiltration. The capacity for independent thought was meant to be limited to tactical applications. But you're more than your programming, Liana said softly. Because of you. Akacha reached for Liana's hand. You treated my wounds, but you also saw me not as sentinel, not as alien, but as a being capable of growth. The confession hung between them, dangerous and beautiful. When Naira leaned forward, Liana met her halfway. Their lips touched cool crystal against warm skin, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Liana felt the subtle vibration that ran through Vesperian bodies when they experienced strong emotion. I need to warn your people, Naira whispered against her lips, and then I can never return to the collective. Where will you go? Liana asked. I don't know. But for the first time, that uncertainty feels like freedom, not failure. As they stood embraced beneath alien stars, neither noticed the small reconnaissance drone hovering at the edge of the agricultural dome. Its recording crystal, capturing every word, every touch transmitting directly to Vesperian High Command. The crisis erupted with the dawn. Liana was jolted awake by colony-wide alarms, followed by Elias pounding on her door. Vesperian warships just entered orbit, he said grimly. The delegation has been recalled and we're under evacuation orders. They're claiming we kidnapped their sentinel. What? Liana grabbed her emergency medical kit. That's absurd. Something about neural manipulation and biotoxin influence. They're demanding we release Naira to their custody or face orbital bombardment. Cold fear gripped Liana's heart. Where is she? Colonial security has her in containment. They think she's some kind of saboteur. Liana pushed past him. She was trying to warn us. The containment facility was chaos security personnel preparing evacuation protocols, while administrators argued about diplomatic responses. Through the transparent barrier, Liana could see Naira sitting perfectly still, eyes closed in what appeared to be meditation. "Let me speak to her," Liana demanded. "Absolutely not," the security chief replied. "For all we know, she orchestrated this entire scenario." A violent tremor shook the building, the first warning shot from the Vesperian ships. "We have 20 minutes before they start targeted strikes," someone called out. Liana made a split-second decision, slipping away from the argument toward the medical override panel. Every containment cell had one designed for emergency treatment access. She quickly entered her authorization code. The door slid open. Naira's eyes snapped open. "You shouldn't be here, neither should you." Liana took her hand. "They're blaming you for everything, because I'm defective in their eyes." Naira stood, her movements fluid despite her distress. "My neural patterns show anomalous development, what they consider contamination, but is simply growth." Another impact rattled the colony, more powerful than the first. "We need to stop this," Liana said. "Together, there's only one way." Naira's expression turned resolute. "We must reach my people's ship. I can activate the diplomatic override channel, force them to hear truth before they act." They slipped out through emergency corridors, Liana's medical clearance giving them access where security would have stopped them. Outside, colonists rushed toward evacuation shelters while defense systems powered up futile gestures against Vesperian technology. At the landing pad, the delegation's ship stood unattended, its crystal hull pulsing with energy patterns. "They'll shoot us down if we try to launch," Liana said. "Not with both of us aboard." Naira placed her palm against the ship's access panel. "The diplomatic vessel will register both Vesperian and human biosignatures. The confusion will buy us moments." The ship admitted them, interior lights adjusting to a spectrum comfortable for both their visual ranges. Naira moved to the command console, her fingers dancing across crystalline interfaces. "What now?" Liana asked. "Now we show them truth." Naira activated the ship's communication array. "Help me, Liana. Place your hands here. The system will analyze your brain patterns, confirm absence of coercion." As Liana complied, their joined consciousnesses flooded the communication network. Images flowed between them, Liana's memories of healing Naira, their growing connection, Naira's warning about the water rights deception. But deeper currents moved beneath these surface memories, Liana's compassion, her healing touch that went beyond physical wounds. Naira's awakening to possibilities beyond duty, her choice to protect rather than conquer. Above them, the Vesperian command ships received this unprecedented neural transmission. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the threatening posture of the warships changed. A communication channel opened. The Vesperian High Commander's face appeared on the view screen. Severe, it's ancient, with intricate patterns covering every visible surface of his crystalline features. "Sentinel Vitar," he acknowledged, his tone unreadable. "Your neural patterns have been examined. They are ... unprecedented." "They are authentic," Naira replied firmly. "The collective has existed for millennia without deviation," the commander continued. "Our strength lies in unity of purpose." "Perhaps our evolution lies in diversity of thought," Naira countered. A long silence followed. Liana held her breath, acutely aware that the lives of everyone in the colony hung in this fragile moment. "The warships will withdraw," the commander finally stated. "This connection between species requires study. The water rights negotiations will proceed with true transparency." His gaze shifted to Liana. "The human doctor may continue her work, including study of Vesperian physiology." "And Naira?" Liana asked boldly. "Sentinel Vitar's status is ... reclassified. She will serve as permanent liaison to Novaterra colony. The first of her kind." When the transmission ended, Liana turned to Naira in disbelief. "Did that just happen?" "Change comes slowly to the collective," Naira said, wonder in her voice. "But it comes." As the warships departed and the colony cautiously resumed normal operations. Liana and Naira stood at the observation deck of the clinic watching the twin moons rise. Their hands intertwined, 5 fingers entwined with 5 human warmth against Vesperian cool. "You once told me even crystal can change, given sufficient pressure and time," Liana said softly, touching the 2 pendants that now hung together around her neck. "And now we are both changed," Naira replied. "Not human, not Vesperian, but something new, beyond the settlement's boundaries." The first exploratory well had begun drawing water from the shared aquifer water that would nourish both communities. And in the night sky above Novaterra, stars continued their ancient patterns, different to the boundaries drawn by those who lived beneath their light. Some boundaries, after all, were meant to be crossed.